UN Security Council calls for cessation of hostilities in Sudan. South Korea conducts Air Force drills in response to North artillery drill. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jessica Lee and you're watching World Today. The United States military carried out its third airdrop of aid into Gaza, dropping more than 38,000 meals amid an unfolding humanitarian catastrophe in the crowded coastal enclave. The Israeli offensive in Gaza, which is supported by the United States, has displaced most of the enclave's 2.3 million people and led to critical shortages of food, water and medicine. In a statement, the U.S. military said the aid was dropped by U.S. and Jordanian C-130 aircraft in northern Gaza. U.S. officials said that aid dropped by air is an expensive and insufficient alternative to aid that is trucked in, given the scale of the humanitarian crisis. President Joe Biden's administration is pressing for greater access by land and also exploring a maritime option. Regarding a ceasefire agreement in Gaza by the start of Ramadan, Biden said on Friday that it was looking tough for those conditions. Biden, who was speaking to reporters near Philadelphia, also said he was concerned about violence in East Jerusalem without a ceasefire. The United Nations Security Council on Friday called for an immediate cessation of hostilities in Sudan, prompting China to remind it not to forget about the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza, and Russia to accuse the United States of double standards. Now, Russia abstained while the remaining 14 council members voted in favor of the British-drafted resolution that called for an immediate cessation of hostilities during the fasting month of Ramadan, which begins next week.
中方对刚刚世界上所有的人的生命都是宝贵的。安理会就苏丹冲突斋月停火通过决议的同时，不能忘记加沙的人民仍在炮火中遭受苦难。国际社会必须推动加沙立即停火，结束冲突，为加沙民众保留生存下去的希望，为当地穆斯林信众宗教活动提供最基本的安全条件。
War erupted in Sudan on the 15th of April last year between the Sudanese army and paramilitary rapid support forces, or the RSF. The UN says nearly 25 million people, half Sudan's population, need aid. Some 8 million have fled their homes and hunger is rising. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky inspected 2 warships constructed for the country's Navy forces during his visit to Istanbul on Friday. Now, 2 corvettes, Ivan Vyhovsky and Ivan Mazepa, are being constructed in partnership with Turkey. The Turkish presidency said Zelensky will later hold talks with President Tayyip Erdogan on the course of the Ukraine-Russia war, the Black Sea grain deal and bilateral relations. Zelensky's office said the agenda included a peace formula aimed at ending the war with Russia, bilateral defense industry cooperation and the release of Ukrainian prisoners of war held by Moscow. NATO member Turkey shares a maritime border with Ukraine and Russia in the Black Sea and has focused on maintaining good ties with both amid the war. It has provided military support for Kiev while opposing the sanctions imposed on Russia. Zelensky's visit to Istanbul also comes before an expected visit by Russian President Vladimir Putin, which the Kremlin has said would be after Russian elections on the 15th until the 17th of March. Now, South Korea's Air Force conducted military drills on Friday after North Korea's state media released photographs showing its leader, Kim Jong-un, guiding an artillery firing drill the day before. The South Korean military said in a statement that the fighter jets KF-16 and FA-50 took part in live-fire exercises involving the AIM-9 air-to-air missile and Korean GPS-guided bomb KGGB on Thursday, which are meant to target the North's artillery firing and cruise missiles. Along with the United States, South Korea's Freedom Shield joint military exercise, South Korea's Air Force on Friday also staged an elephant walk, the taxiing of military aircraft in close formation with the country's 33 fighter jets at an airbase in Suwon. The South Korean military said the drills will focus on deterring North Korea's nuclear threats, to which the North had denounced as provocative and reckless. State media said the North's drill conducted on Thursday involved units that are in firing range of the enemy's capital, referring to Seoul, the South Korean capital. Now, 6 people from Sri Lanka, including a mother and 4 young children, were knifed to death in the Canadian capital, Ottawa, late on Wednesday, rocking a country where mass murders are rare. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said he was horrified by what he called a terrible tragedy. The father of the family was also wounded in the attack and is in hospital. The victims were found inside a house in the southwestern suburb of Barhaven. Police arrived on the scene following emergency calls shortly before 11 p.m. Police said Fabio Di Zoisa, a 19-year-old male student from Sri Lanka, had been arrested and charged with 6 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. According to the police, Di Zoisa knew the family and had been living in the house. The victims killed were a 35-year-old woman and her children aged 7, 4, 2 years old, as well as another 2-month-old and a 40-year-old man who was an acquaintance of the family. Ottawa Police Chief Eric Stubbs, in a televised news conference, described the incident as a senseless act of violence perpetrated on purely innocent people. Police say they had no previous dealings with the suspect or the family. Coming up next, concerns surface over vagueness of Hong Kong's new national security bill. But first, Donald Trump on Friday appealed the writer E. Jean Carroll's $83.3 million verdict in her recent defamation case, which arose from his branding her a liar after she accused him of raping her decades ago. Now, Trump said his appeal to the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Manhattan will cover all adverse orders, rulings, decrees, decisions, opinions, memoranda, conclusions, or findings leading to the verdict. The former U.S. president also revealed that he has lined up a $91.63 million bond from federal insurance company for the appeal, reflecting the trial court's usual practice that bonds equal 110% of judgments. The appeal stemmed from a Manhattan jury's conclusion that Trump had defamed Carroll, a former Elle magazine columnist, in June 2019. Jurors awarded Carroll $18.3 million of compensatory damages, including $7.3 million for emotional harm and $11 million for harm to her reputation. They also awarded her $65 million for punitive damages. Now, Trump has said he shouldn't owe anything, and alternatively that both sums should be reduced substantially. Now, Trump is appealing that decision and set aside $5.55 million with the Manhattan court during that process. Now, both appeals could take years. Now, Carroll is 80 and Trump is 77. Now, Hong Kong's government on Friday unveiled its proposed national security bill following a month-long public consultation that ended last week. Now, city leaders want it to be swiftly passed, potentially within weeks. Some lawyers analysing the draft said, at first glance, elements of the revised sentences for the offences are similar to Western ones. But some provisions, such as those for sedition and state secrets, were broader and potentially tougher. Now, under the proposed law, the court can deny the rights of arrestees' choice of lawyers, which law experts said can be problematic in the principle of fair trials. The bill includes sentences of up to life imprisonment for treason, insurrection, sabotage, and mutiny, 20 years for espionage, and 10 years for crimes linked to state secrets and sedition, while noting Hong Kong's freedom of expression and other rights. A previous attempt to enact Article 23 in 2003 was shelved after an estimated 500,000 people staged a peaceful protest. The hundreds of socialist supporters battled heavy rain on Friday to accompany candidate leader Pedro Nuno Santos during the closing campaign rally in central Lisbon, ahead of the snap election taking place tomorrow. Opinion polls show that Portugal's election is unlikely to produce a clear winner, and the far right could play a decisive role in subsequent coalition talks, just as the country prepares to celebrate 50 years since the fall of a fascist dictatorship. Now, Santos, accompanied by current Prime Minister Antonio Costa, is seeking to continue 8 years of socialist rule. The election, taking place 2 years ahead of schedule, was called when Socialist Costa resigned in November after being named in a public prosecutor's office investigation into alleged graft in his government's handling of multi-billion euro investment projects. Costa, whose chief of staff was briefly arrested, has denied wrongdoing and was never charged with any crime. In the last election in January 2022, Costa's Socialists won an absolute parliamentary majority with over 41% of the vote. The government's implosion has brought their ratings in opinion polls below 30%, just behind their centre-right rivals, the Democratic Alliance or the AD. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has delayed its decision on Eli Lilly's experimental treatment for early Alzheimer's disease and will hold a meeting of outside experts to discuss its safety and efficacy. Now, the FDA's decision came as a surprise to many Alzheimer's experts who had expected a full approval for Lilly's drug donanemab based on clinical trial data that showed the treatment was safe and effective. No date has been set for the advisory committee meeting, but it could be several months before it is held. Now, this marks the second delay for the eagerly anticipated treatment by the FDA after it declined to grant accelerated approval for the medicine a year ago. Drugs like donanemab, which slow disease progression in early-stage patients, represent a new era in the treatment of Alzheimer's after 3 decades of failed attempts to fight the fatal disease that affects more than 6 million Americans. Now, given by infusion once a month, donanemab is designed to clear a toxic Alzheimer's-linked protein called beta amyloid from the brain. The treatment slowed progression of memory and thinking problems by 22 to 29% overall in a large clinical trial. In patients with low to medium levels of a second Alzheimer's-related protein called tau, the drug slowed disease progression by 35.1% compared with placebo. Still to come in sports, Al Hilal reinforces their domination in Saudi Pro League. Now, kicking off our sports segment, runaway Saudi professional league leaders Al Hilal beat Al Riyadh on Friday to extend their advantage at the top of the table. Now, 3 second-half goals gave Jorge Jesus' team another victory that sees them edge closer to claiming the title. They now lead second-place Al Nassr by 12 points. The visitors had looked like taking the lead in added time at the end of the first half, but Alexander Mitrovic's penalty was superbly saved by Al Riyad's goalkeeper Martin Campana. The miss looked like it might prove costly when 7 minutes into the second half, the home side took the lead after Ali Al-Bulahi deflected across into his own goal. 15 minutes later, Al Hilal drew level from the penalty spot. This one successfully converted by Ruben Neves, who turned provider in the 75th minute when he picked out Michael, who headed in at the far post to give his side the lead. Mitrovic made amends for his earlier miss when he completed the scoring from yet another penalty kick in added time to seal the victory. Now over in Jeddah, 16-year-old Talal Haji scored a late winner as Al Ittihad won 2-1 at home to Al Ogdood to climb to fourth in the Saudi Pro League standings. Saad Al Musa opened the scoring for the hosts in Jeddah on the stroke of half-time before Spanish midfielder Alex Collado equalised in the 63rd minute with a left-footed strike from outside the box. The Haji then found the back of the net with 7 minutes of regulation time remaining as Al Ittihad got back to winning ways following consecutive SPL and Asian Champions League losses to Al Hilal. Al Ittihad moved up to fourth in the league on 40 points, one ahead of fifth place Al Ta'awun, who host third place Al Ahli, 44 points later today. Sebastian Coe will chair a Manchester United task force to explore options for a new or regenerated stadium at Old Trafford. The Premier League club announced this in a statement released on Friday. Coe is the former chair of the 2012 London Olympics Organising Committee and current president of World Athletics, with the task force formation coming on the heels of British billionaire Jim Ratcliffe's acquisition of a stake in the club. The Old Trafford Regeneration Task Force will assess the feasibility of building a new stadium that is equipped to handle international games, plus provide a modernised home for Manchester United. The club said it will not move away from Old Trafford, ensuring they remain rooted to their historic home. International Olympic Committee announced that the participation of Russian and Belarusian athletes in the Paris 2024 Olympics opening ceremony will be discussed at the next IOC Executive Board meeting on the 19th of March.
2024. Aujourd'hui, là, ce n'est pas le cas. Les athlètes détenant un passeport russe ou biélorusse qui participeront aux Jeux n'ont pas été interdits de participer à la cérémonie d'ouverture. Il y a encore du temps entre aujourd'hui et la cérémonie d'ouverture, mais il n'y a pas de décision ferme, à ma connaissance, qui a été prise à ce stade.
The International Paralympic Committee, or IPC, said on Wednesday that Russian and Belarusian athletes joining the Paralympics would not be part of their opening ceremony. The Russian and Belarusian athletes cannot take part in team competitions at the Summer Olympics, but are allowed to participate as neutrals without flags or anthems being played. The IOC had sanctioned Russia and Belarus after the February 2022 invasion of Ukraine, which Moscow calls a special military operation, but has since paved the way for their return to international competitions. Max Verstappen on Friday took pole position for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix before calling into question his future with Red Bull after his mentor was threatened with suspension in another dramatic twist in the Christian Horner saga. A three-time world champion clocked a fastest lap time of 1 minute 27.472 seconds to outpace Ferrari's Charles Leclerc by 0.3 of a second, with his teammate Sergio Perez third in a tense floodlit qualifying session. It was Verstappen's 34th pole position and his first at the Jeddah Corniche circuit. However, his performance on the track was overshadowed again by bitter wrangling of it. His mentor and Red Bull advisor Helmut Marko is facing an inquiry and possible suspension after he was suspected of being the source of leaks to news media about Red Bull's investigation into the conduct of team boss Horner. Verstappen, 26, was unequivocal in his support for the 80-year-old Marko. Now, back on the track on Friday, the action was lit up by the performance of British teenager Oliver Bearman, who qualified 11th for Ferrari on his competitive F1 debut. The 18-year-old was dramatically called up early in the day to replace appendicitis victim Carlos Sainz. Fernando Alonso was a bold fourth for Aston Martin, ahead of McLaren's Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, and the two Mercedes of George Russell and seven-time champion Lewis Hamilton. Lasting impressions through deeds in their lifetime. As sadness rippled far and wide after the passing of a legendary Japanese comic artist, let's take a look at the story and more in our Offbeat segment. Tributes poured in not just from manga and anime fans, but also from officials from various governments, including Japan and China, after the death of Japanese manga comic creator Akira Toriyama. Akira Toriyama, known for such popular titles as Dragon Ball and Dr. Slump, died at the age of 68 due to acute subdural hematoma. Japanese Cabinet Secretary Yoshimasa Hayashi yesterday said Sensei Toriyama's works have led to a broad recognition around the world of content published in Japan and an increase in inbound tourists. According to Hayashi, it has also played an extremely important role in demonstrating Japan's soft power. Dragon Ball, first published in weekly Shonen Jump comic magazine in 1984, was later adopted into movies, video games, and TV series, which were distributed in more than 80 countries. Toriyama was also known as a character and monster designer of the blockbuster role-playing game series Dragon Quest. Now, fans from all around the globe expressed their appreciation for Toriyama with the hashtag Thank You Toriyama trending worldwide. Teruko Yahata was 8 when she saw a bluish-white light envelop the sky over her home city of Hiroshima one summer morning. The moments before the first atomic bomb explosion knocked her unconscious and leveled swaths of the Japanese city. Now, at 86, she's eager to be among the first to see the film Oppenheimer at its delayed opening in Japan on the 29th of March, hoping the biopic of the scientist who led the development of the bomb will reinvigorate debate over nuclear weapons.
オッペンハイマーさん自身に対しての恨みとかそういうもんじゃなくてもっと大きな問題で本当に被爆者としてはその開発製造実際に投下っていうのは本当に今でも背筋が凍るような思いですね。
The film about atomic bomb pioneer J. Robert Oppenheimer, directed by Christopher Nolan, is expected to win numerous Oscars at next week's Academy Awards, having already grossed nearly $1 billion since its opening in July 2023. But Japan, the only nation to have suffered atomic bombings, was initially left out of plans for the worldwide screening. The opening in late summer came just weeks before solemn memorials in Hiroshima and Nagasaki held annually to mark the bombings that claimed more than 200,000 lives. Over 100 Lego sculptures made up of 1 million bricks are being showcased at the Art of the Brick exhibition in London. Artist Nathan Sawaya spent nearly 20 years of his life gluing together tiny bricks to create reimagined versions of some of the world's most famous art masterpieces, such as Michelangelo's David, Van Gogh's Starry Night, and Da Vinci's Mona Lisa. Among the well-known pieces like Edvard Munch's The Scream and Rodin's The Thinker, visitors will also find original creations such as a dinosaur skeleton and a torso ripping its chest open with thousands of yellow Lego bricks spilling out.
I hope when people come to this exhibition they get inspired. I think the role of an artist is to inspire. So when people come here, I hope they're inspired to explore a little of their own creativity.
Dancing light beams and colorful digital displays were among the dazzling array of artwork showcased at the UAE's annual Art Dubai event. Now in its 17th iteration, the fair exhibits works from more than 120 galleries across the world, featuring digital, contemporary, and modern works. Canadian-Korean contemporary artist Krista Kim worked on an installation dubbed Heart Space 2024, which was commissioned by Julius Baer for Art Dubai.
Light is the new ink because the future is digital, and we are now living in an age of digital consciousness, and we are now digital humans. And with AI, we are actually in an age of acceleration. So we are using digital as a medium of communication and technology, and it's only natural that we express ourselves. What does it mean to be human in the digital age, and where's the beauty in it?
Held in Dubai over 3 days, the art event also includes educational talks, some geared at students, live performances, and workshops.
Kita perkenalkan sistem padu pangkalan data utama. Pertama, ia selaras dengan pendekatan dan dasar transformasi digital. Kedua, menjamin supaya manfaat dan kemudahan itu dinikmati oleh orang yang berhak menerimanya. Dan tentunya dengan cara yang sedemikian, mengurangkan kos, mengurangkan ketirisan. Dan kaedah diperkenalkan melalui padu ini ialah secara tidak langsung memaksa setiap warga negara faham tentang transformasi digital dan menggunakan sistem padu. Dengan sendirinya kita ada pencerahan kecelekan budaya dan kecelekan digital.
And that wraps up this edition of World Today. In our top story, UN Security Council calls for cessation of hostilities in Sudan. I'm Jessica Lee. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Thank you for watching.